Can you think of a time when you ignored that gut feeling that you got about something? What happened, and why didn't you listen? Hi there, and welcome to Beyond the Shuffle. In this podcast, we explore our everyday lives through the lens of tarot. I'm Adrienne Amari, your host, guide, and lover of the unknown. So settle in, open your mind, and let's go beyond the shuffle. Today I want to talk about something that I think is so prevalent in our society right now that creates a lot of dis-ease and discomfort. And that is not so much fear of the unknown, but not having the answers. Now, we live in an information age. We Google everything when we don't know it. We track our sleep. We constantly check the weather on an app instead of going outside and seeing what it looks like. And we have so much lost the comfort and the muscle of not knowing. And I know it feels like there are so many things up in the air right now. And even the not knowing something small in your own life feels so much heavier than it used to because it just feels like there's these question marks all over the place. And we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And if you're in any spiritual space at all, you'll know that a lot of people are talking about the big shifts and changes that are coming, and that people are waking up and there's an ascension happening. And all of that is absolutely wonderful. But how do we deal with it when we're not really sure what it looks like or how to navigate it? And the card that we're bringing into this today is the High Priestess because she is so perfect for this. She is the card of intuition and the subconscious mind. She really tells us to pay attention to that inner feeling, that inner wisdom, the messages that we're receiving from the world around us with discernment, of course. She sits right on the veil of the subconscious and the conscious worlds. And if you look at the card, you can see that she is sitting between two pillars, one black, one white, Boaz and Yakin. And the pillars really speak to the duality of the High Priestess, the conscious versus the subconscious, black versus white, masculine versus feminine, severity versus mercy. And the High Priestess knows that it is all of these parts that make up the whole, that we need both sides to really understand the world. You can see that she's also holding a Torah scroll in her arms, but it is half hidden. And I wish I could remember where I read this, but that hidden Torah can be seen to represent the idea that wisdom or answers or knowledge isn't necessarily revealed to us when we demand it or when we want it. A lot of the time it's revealed when we are ready or when we actually need it. And I don't know about you, but I actually find that kind of comforting in a really weird way. Her crown also represents the subconscious mind, as it's often compared to the crown that the Egyptian goddess Hathor wears. And she has that crescent moon hanging at her feet. Her robes themselves also look like water, and water is often indicative of spirituality and our intuition. And I love that on the curtain behind her, she has the pomegranates and the palm fronds. So again, another representation of that duality. We have the feminine and the masculine. And of course, we can see the pomegranate as also a relation to Persephone, who for half the year spent her time in the underworld, and for the other half was up here on Earth. And I try not to get too crazy about the symbols in these episodes, but I love the symbolism in the High Priestess. I feel like there's so much richness there that it's really hard for me not to talk about because I'm genuinely excited about it. But all of that to say, yes, the High Priestess is a card of intuition and the subconscious, as we can so plainly see, but she also represents the unknown and the mysteries that are out there in the world. There are things that we don't know the answer to, that we might never know the answer to. And how do we navigate that? Well, by trusting and listening and strengthening our intuition, and also being receptive to the world that we're living in. And maybe this sounds a little counterintuitive, but I think our intuition really grows most at those times when we feel lost, stagnated, in the dark, confused, questioning what's going to come next. I also think it's really important to recognize that sometimes the messages that we receive for ourselves, they might not make sense. They might not be logical, and no one else might get it. And that makes it really difficult sometimes to trust it. But remember that you don't have to explain it to anybody. You don't owe them an explanation as to why that gut feeling is popping up and why you need to act or react to it in a way that feels right for you. But we also have to be a little realistic as well. We don't want to use, and I'm putting this in air quotes even though you can't see me, intuition as an excuse to react a certain way, to ghost people, or to be passive aggressive. We really need to make sure that we're not mistaking our fears and anxieties for those gut feelings. And I can see the excuse on both sides. Sometimes we get that intuitive hit and we want to be more positive, or we try to make excuses or rationalize the thought so we end up going against what it's telling us. And other times we use it as an excuse when it really is that fear. Now, this analogy came from Allie Campbell, and it's a great way of looking at your intuition. So if you're struggling to realize, is it intuition or is it fear? Remember that fear or anxiety will be loud. It's like a marching band, and it's the drums and the trumpets blaring in your brain. Intuition, however, will be quiet. It's like that flute or that sweet little piccolo playing in the background that you don't really hear because everything else is drowning it out. So before we get into talking more about being comfortable with the mysteries of the universe and how to really strengthen your intuition, let me tell you a story. And this story isn't necessarily a happy one, but I think it really demonstrates the power of our intuition and how easy it is to over-explain and ignore. I had a rabbit named Bailey, and he went through kind of a big health thing with a brain parasite. We got him cured from that, but then I had to take him back to the vet to get his teeth filed because rabbits' teeth don't stop growing, and his were growing in a really uncomfortable way. So I bundled him up in his carry bag, which was actually an old puppy carry bag I had for my dog, and we headed over to the vet for his appointment. Now, because he had been fighting this parasite, he had been to the vet many times, and I never had a bad feeling or anything like that. But that day, when I pulled out of the parking lot, my breath caught in my throat. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt panicked. My heart sank, and there was a huge part of me that said, turn around and take him home. You shouldn't be doing this today. But of course, I didn't want to be that paranoid pet parent who's like, oh, I have to get my bunny because I feel weird about this. So I drove home and waited. And about an hour and a half later, they called me and they told me that Bailey had passed away. And the worst part is, before I even got the call, I knew it. I don't know how, but I just knew it. And I was devastated. Especially because he had fought so hard to overcome that brain parasite, only to pass away on a routine procedure like getting his teeth fixed. So we'll cut ahead to a year or two later after I had adopted the rabbit I have now. His name is Percival, and he was scheduled for a neuter surgery. So of course I go up to the vet and already I can feel my stomach sinking. But it was so easy to tell myself it's because I had that bad experience with Bailey that I was really anxious about this now. And I'm sure partially I was. And again, I dropped him off. I felt sick in the car. And you think at that point I would have learned my lesson and turned around. But I thought I was just being crazy and really thinking of what happened to Bailey. And lo and behold, a few hours later, the vet texted me to say that Percival had an allergic reaction to the anesthetic, that he had almost died, but they were able to bring him back. However, they were having a hard time keeping up his body temperature. And of course, I'm sitting here beating myself up because I knew I should have turned around and picked him up just like I should have done for Bailey. And I know hindsight is 20/20, but if I had listened to my intuition, none of us would have had to go through that. Now, luckily, Percival is a tough and very stubborn boy, and he bounced back in no time. But it was still such a horrible feeling, and such a wake-up call for me that, oh my goodness, listen to your intuition. And that might seem like an extreme example, but I know that you've had the same experience, maybe not with bunnies per se, in your life where you didn't listen, and you didn't listen more than once, and you're thinking, my goodness, if only I had trusted myself, things would have turned out differently. And we can't sit here and lament on that for too long, but we do have to learn the lesson so that we do better next time. Okay, so how do we strengthen our intuition? I always say our intuition is like a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it will be to trust it and not feel like a crazy person when you do. So first and foremost, pay attention to your body, how your body reacts to it. As you can tell in my story, I had a very visceral reaction when I was in the car driving away from the vet. And of course, it's not always going to be like that, but see what you're feeling in your body when your intuition flares up. And if you're trying to differentiate between anxiety and intuition within your body, think about where you feel anxious. A lot of the time it feels like a heartbeat in our throat. It's loud, it's future-oriented, it's what-ifs and you musts. Whereas our intuition is more grounded in our center. It's quieter, it's present-oriented, and it's often more like a yes, no, or wait. There's often a gentleness to intuition that anxiety doesn't pair with. You can also really work with your body to listen to your subconscious and your intuition by doing things like the body pendulum, where you stand relaxed and straight, you clear your mind, take a deep breath, ask yourself a question, and see which way your body sways. Now, you do have to calibrate it. So, for example, you would say, okay, show me yes, show me no, exactly the same way you would do as if you were using a pendulum, but you're using your full body instead. You can also do kind of like a body map exercise where you would start by asking yourself a question you know the answer to. So for example, is my name Adrian? And then you notice where you feel that in your body. Then you do a no question. Do I live on Mars? And you feel that in your body. Working with your body in this way can help you not only understand when it's your intuition versus when it's fear or anxiety, but also when it's coming up and you're not even thinking of one or the other. Really practice giving yourself a second, because intuition generally arrives before your conscious mind has a chance to kick in. A really easy and fun exercise you can do for this is when you hear your phone buzz with a notification, before you check what the notification is, tune into your intuition and see if you can feel it out. You can write it down if you want, or you can just sit with it for a second, but do that without going to the, oh, well, it can't be this because, or so-and-so should be messaging me now, or whatever explanation you try to put behind it. You can, of course, use my favorite tool, the tarot, to work with your intuition, whether that's trying to see what energy is on a card that's flipped over, or if you get that intuitive hit, pull a few cards for clarity. Ask the cards, what is my intuition trying to tell me? And then see how that plays out. Along with feelings, your intuition can pop up by trying to show you repeated signs, messages, and symbols. So if you keep seeing the same number over and over, or if you keep seeing the same animal over and over, and especially something that you don't always see, like I always see a rabbit and a dog, so for me that wouldn't really mean anything. But if you do see something a little bit out of the ordinary repeatedly, look into what that means, because that's probably your intuition or your subconscious trying to tell you something. You can make an intuition journal to really record the messages, feelings that you're getting, and again, see how they play out for you. And one other thing that can be super helpful is don't tell anybody right away. A lot of the time when we get that intuitive message and we say it to somebody else, it almost takes its power away and it can make it harder to trust. And I think the biggest thing for really being able to trust your intuition is letting go of the fear of not knowing if the answer is right or the fear of being wrong. Because we are human, we are not infallible, so we will be wrong sometimes, we will misinterpret things sometimes, and that's okay because it's all part of the learning process. Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, cool, Adrian, that's all well and good. Yeah, I can work on strengthening my intuition, or maybe you already feel super confident about your intuition. But how does that help us accept the fact that we don't get all the answers and we're not going to know everything? Being uncomfortable about not knowing something usually stems from a belief that we're not going to be able to handle what's coming. So if we are listening to our intuition, it's kind of like an internal safety system. Because even if we don't know what's coming, our intuition can help us be guided through the dark. And that relates also to the moon card in tarot, trusting our intuition to guide us through the fog. But if you know that you can trust yourself and that you can trust your inner compass, it doesn't matter what's hiding in the dark or on the other side, because you have what you need to navigate it regardless. Now we have to remember that the High Priestess so much exists in the present moment. So yes, while she carries wisdom from all times, she's grounded in the here and in the now. So when you're getting nervous about what's going to happen or where things are leading or what's the answer, don't worry about 6, 7, 8 months from now. Worry about a few minutes from now. Scale it back, hone in on the present, because that tells your brain that you're safe now in this moment, which can take some of the anxiety of not knowing away. Now, I know a lot of people don't like not having answers because it feels like a void. It's empty, it's scary, it's black. But with all of her wisdom and all of her knowledge, the High Priestess can see possibility. So instead of looking into the dark and seeing a void, look into it and see all the stars that represent all of the possibilities that are out there for you to experience. Instead of thinking about a void, think about a mystery. Because isn't that what life is? It's a mystery that we're here to solve. A lot of us don't come here knowing what our purpose is right away or what lessons we're meant to be learning here and now. And that's what we're striving towards. That's what we're learning to figure out. And again, I think there's some solace in the idea of, once I trust myself and I trust that inner knowing, I will figure it out, and I'll figure it out as I need to. Because honestly, isn't that part of the fun? When you are faced with an unknown or a situation where you're like, I don't have any answers for this, find proof in the past. A lot of the time, we already know the answer before we actually act on it. And I see this come up probably more often than not in relationship readings, where it's like, yeah, I knew they weren't good for me. I knew the relationship wasn't going anywhere. I knew it wasn't the right match, but I stayed in it because ABC. But their intuition, their gut feeling was like, this isn't good. I don't want to be here. But it was a hard relationship to break off. So remember times where you felt like that, where you're like, no, I knew better. How did you know better? And how does that help you face the unknown and trust your inner wisdom now? And I know we talked about this in The Fool, but it's okay if you don't know the ending, because we have to remember that the Fool goes through all the cards before they get to the end. And in the High Priestess, he learns his inner wisdom and to trust that intuition so that he can navigate through the rest of the lessons and the challenges that life brings up. And before we get into the collective reading, one thing I do want to say is trust your intuition first. I think it's so easy to want to seek answers, to seek someone to tell you what the messages are. And as somebody who reads for other people, of course, I'm happy to be here and to help you navigate all of that. But if somebody is telling you something, an intuitive message that they got about your life, and it's not sitting right with you, trust it. Examine it to make sure you're not just having resistance because you don't like the message. But trust your intuition first, because you know yourself and your life better than anybody else. If working with the framework of tarot and your intuition is something that you want to dive more deeply into, make sure you check out my Tarot Lab. This is a 6-month membership that features monthly masterclasses on different topics of the tarot, practice sessions, office hour drop-ins, challenges, resources, and tons of support. And if you're looking for more information on that, make sure you check out adrianamari.com/thetarolab. For our collective reading this week, I'm using Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, which is such a cool looking deck, and you can see photos of the cards pulled if you take a look at the show notes or go to adrianamari.com/podcast. Now for our question this week, we're doing what is currently sitting behind the veil that I am finally ready to see, because I wanted to weave in that High Priestess energy. And keeping in line with the High Priestess, I'm going to have you choose a number 1 or 2. So again, choose a number 1 or 2 for what is currently sitting behind the veil that I am finally ready to see. Alrighty, so we'll start with number 1. If you chose number 1, you got Death and Temperance. And honestly, this is a pretty transformational pair. So with Death, it's saying that you are ready to see what parts of yourself you need to let go, what changes you need to make, what doors you need to close. And I'm sure your intuition is already telling you what you actually need to release. So it's time to listen to it. Because death is all about making space in our lives by letting go of what no longer serves us. And that can be ideas, thoughts, beliefs, who we were, things that we're carrying. It could even be clutter that we have to clear, things we need to get rid of to make space for that transformation and for that growth. Now with Temperance, we're finally ready to integrate the parts of ourselves that we've been hiding. Those parts that our gut has been telling us to share with the world and to really bring into our being. Because Temperance is a card of mixing all parts to become whole. It's a card of finding that balance. And on kind of a mundane level, it's telling us to find those moments of inner peace, of tranquility, of serenity, so that we can hear our intuition speak. And if you chose number 2, you have the 10 of Wands and the Ace of Wands. And I love this too, because with the 10 of Wands, we're finally ready to see the burdens that we're carrying that are weighing us down and wearing us out. Now, the 10 of Wands is a close to the finish line kind of card, but it also reminds us to conserve our energy so that we can push through to the finish line. There are probably things you're doing and carrying that you know in your heart of hearts, in your gut, that you don't need to have on your plate. You know when you need to say no. You know when it's too much. So trust yourself and listen to that. Because when we do, we also get the Ace. So once we deal with that 10 of Wands, we get our spark being ready to be ignited. And that tells me that there is something your intuition is telling you to do, that you are being called to do, that maybe you've been ignoring because you're just darn tired. So the Ace is trusting that inner spark, allowing it to ignite and seeing where it takes you. It's all about saying yes. So sitting behind that veil is what you're supposed to be saying yes to. Ooh, I just really liked those pairs of cards. So I hope the message resonated. Let me know in the comments or send me a message if it did. And it's really interesting because I chose from different places in the deck. I shuffled the deck before I did this, and we got 13 and 14 with Death and Temperance, and we got the 10 and again the beginning with the Ace. So really weird that they came up that way. So I hope that today's episode gave you some useful tips on working with your intuition and getting a little more comfortable with not having all of the answers. I know things are scary and wild and crazy right now, but all you can do is trust yourself to navigate your way through, because we've got this. And while this might sound cheesy, I really, truly believe that the more of us that listen to our intuition over our anxiety and our fear, the more of us that trust the path we're on without having all the answers, the better we'll all be. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you give it a like, give it a follow. You can always stay in touch at Instagram or Facebook with Beyond the Shuffle Podcast. New episodes come out every Wednesday, so until next week, stay open, stay curious, and start trusting that intuition.